Hello and welcome to Africa Today. I am Esther Amakwariola. It has been days of interesting political events, especially in East Africa, where it has been tales of eligible voters and excited faces, long queues in polling stations, a landslide victory for one man in Rwanda, and a tightly contested election between two men in Kenya. Post-election reactions in both countries are products of varying outcomes, as normal life returns to the land of 1,000 hills and anxiety builds up in parts of Kenya over allegations of electoral malpractice. And so we ask, what are your thoughts on the political developments in Rwanda and Kenya, where elections have held recently? You can join the conversation and share your thoughts with us on Twitter at TVC News NG. We'll take a report, and Africa Today will continue. Welcome on board.
Rwandan President Paul Kagame's victory at the poll has extended his 70 years in power. Kagame won international commendations for presiding over a peaceful and rapid economic recovery in the Central African nation since the 1994 genocide, when an estimated 800,000 Tutsis and moderate Hutus were killed. President Kagame is one of Africa's longest-serving leaders, but many believe his people want him to stay on, and the international community is impressed with him. Africa has many seat-tight leaders that seem not ready to leave soon. In Zimbabwe, President Robert Mugabe is the only leader the people know. He has been ruling since independence. He has refused to step aside, despite his deteriorating health and old age. Jose Eduardo dos Santos of Angola is Africa's second longest-serving president, with 38 years in power. For a man whose face is on the country's currency and citizens' national ID cards, his decision not to run in the August the 23rd election came as a shock. Another long-serving leader is Yoweri Museveni, who is running his fifth term as president of Uganda after getting to power through coup 31 years ago. He's accused of grooming his son to succeed him. Museveni believes he is the only one capable to lead Uganda. Equatorial Guinea's President Teodoro Obiang Nguema Mbasogo has been ruling since 1979. Despite unspeakable corruption allegations against his 38-year regime and the scandalous extravagance of his playboy son, who is facing trial in France for money laundering, stepping down is not in his agenda soon. And the questions many are asking are, does the narrative change if the people want their leader to stay on in power, and is it good for democracy?
Welcome back. We begin in Rwanda, where President Paul Kagame recently won a landslide victory in the country's election, securing a third term in office and extending his 17 years in power. President Kagame is credited for political stability and economic development he has brought to Rwanda since the 1994 genocide. Joining me in the studio on Africa Today, I have Clem Baye, media consultant and political analyst. Good to have you here.
Good evening, Esther.
And on Skype, I have Sylvester Odion Ahaine, senior lecturer, political science department, Lagos State University in Nigeria. Good to have you as well on the program. All right, let me begin with you now, Clem. Paul Kagame, yes, he is the president of Rwanda right now, and everyone seems to be happy by it. But international critics have come up to say that it was a one-horse race because we had him against two other contenders. And for the others, they were disqualified for, well, the reasons best known to the Electoral Commission. Now, with the election having to have seen Paul Kagame and the likelihood of him staying till 2034, what are your thoughts on issues surrounding the election and the re-election of Paul Kagame for the next, 7 years?
Well, typically in a presidential system, you ought to have term limits. But the problem with African political leaders is that they still regard term limits as a way of accepting defeat, as a way of opening the doors for their political rivals to come and take over from them. So a lot of African leaders still cannot stomach the idea of a term limit. I think that given Paul Kagame's hold on Rwanda, I think perhaps if there was a level playing field, he might still have won. But he did not want to even take any chances because it's helped to develop the country, the socio-economic development, but sadly, he's not developed institutions. And he's convinced himself that after he's gone, you're not going to get somebody as good as himself. The challenge is this, that where was he when he became president of Uganda? Who knew him? Who knew that he was there? He ought to accept that. In Uganda today, there are possibly 1,000 people. In Rwanda today, there are possibly 1,000 people that are as good as he is, but they've not been given the opportunity. That is what I want all African leaders to accept, that in their countries are people who are just as good if they were given the opportunity. But they never take a chance. But nature took a chance on them. They ought to take a chance on others.
All right, Sylvester, you just heard Clem's thoughts on this issue, but if you were to look at it from your own perspective, would you say that the people really wanted Paul Kagame?
It is not easy to say so, precisely because opposition forces have been suppressed and emasculated over time. And so if you have the kind of result that you had, about 99%, poll of the total votes, which is a plebiscitarian kind of result that we used to get from military regimes turn civilian government in those days. It is something to worry about, I think.
And from the opposition you just mentioned, if it is something to worry about, how can they have their voice heard if they were to, well, spring up again in the next elections in 2024?
Well, I think I do not see the opposition enjoying any form of democratic space. But of course, the logical thing to do is by organizing through coalition building. And that is the only way, as I've seen in recent times all over Africa, that oppositions have been able to defeat coups.
All right, now, Clem, coalition building, that's Sylvester's own point of view in terms of the opposition coming together to take away the incumbent. But is it going to work where you have different opposition with different ideologies? Do you think they can come together and say, okay, let's take this together and take this man out? Do you think it's ever possible?
Where Sylvester is correct is the fact that if African political leaders are looking for power to change the situation, yes. But if they're looking for power as a it's my turn thing, then it's no good. The challenge is this, that when the opposition comes together and they are united and they are strong and you cannot break their ranks, they can be formidable. Definitely with Mugabe, with the Movement for a Democratic Change and MDC, even though the MDC was at the spearhead, but you could see that when the MDC was together, they did give Mugabe a very close run and in fact won the election. It is widely believed, but in Zimbabwe, somehow or the other, it didn't go that way. And then there was that strange coalition, strange coalition government, which didn't last very long. And now Mugabe is back in power again. But definitely, the united front is a sine qua non. All
right, let's look at still Paul Kagame's matter again. He has said that after 2024, he wouldn't contest. So the presumptions that he would likely come back again till 2034, it's still an assumption. So is it fair to say that he might not be a life-term president in Rwanda after all?
Why should it be at his mercy that he would not contest? What is the feeling of the people of Rwanda? Did they consult them? Did they tell him that, oh, after 2024, you need not contest? You see, it's one of the strange things about African democracies that our leaders do not trust even the electorate, the judgment of the electorate. Why doesn't he give the electorate the capacity to make that call? And he doesn't allow it by making it impossible for rising political stars whom he believes are going to pose a threat, and they're cut down one way or the other. So I don't know that, other than the arrogance of a typical African political leader, to say that, oh, after 2024 I won't contest. In any case, whose word is going to be believed?
Sylvester, do you share the same thoughts by Clem Baye?
Well, of course, what we have seen is what Obafemi Awolowo recognized a long time ago as fatalism, by African leaders, where a situation in which they do not allow opposition forces to blossom, and they do not allow alternative opinions in society. If you understand the dynamics of development, you will recall that you need conflict. You need what we call a unity and conflict of opposites, to move forward. And that is exactly what they have denied the continent in terms of, mainstreaming only one point of view in the governance of the countries in our continent.
All right. Let's hold your thoughts for now, Clem Baye. Sylvester Dion, we need to hold your thoughts for now. We're going on a short break. You're watching Africa Today, and we've been looking at political developments in Rwanda and Kenya, where elections have been held recently. While Rwanda is typically calm, the story is different in Kenya, where there have been reports of violence ahead of the Election Commission's release of the final results in the fiercely contested election. With memories of the 2007 violence still fresh in mind, opposition candidate Raila Odinga raised concerns after he declared himself president, claiming massive fraud was behind preliminary results that placed him far behind incumbent Uhuru Kenyatta. Now, Clem, right now we are expecting the results of the Kenyan presidential election, and as a tally is coming, Kenyatta is on the lead. But in the meantime, Raila Odinga isn't happy. He's even gone as far as bringing in his own results and say he is even the one in lead. But with this disparity, and taking a cue from what happened in 2007, I would like to see a fallback of history today again.
I think there's 2007 and there's 2013. So I'd like to believe that if there's a dispute, it should go the way of 2013. 2007 is too bloody to contemplate a repetition. Be that as it may, the issues still remain. And I think that is one of the challenges I have with African political development. I do not think it is right to imagine that there are some people who must always be excluded from the leadership of a nation.
Some people like who, you mean to say?
Either by way of, take for instance, in Kenya, he's a Luo. Raila Odinga is Luo. I think that what we ought to be looking at, we should not say this group or that group is going to be excluded from power.
Okay.
If we actually had good governance, anybody, even if he's from the most atomistic ethnic group, should be able to aspire to political power, and on the basis of his merits, of what he has to offer, his program and the rest of it, and his character, and perhaps his competence and conviction, we should be able to elect them. I know that sounds a bit utopian, but in Kenya's case, for all this while, the alliance always tends to exclude the Luo, and this is significant, the second largest ethnic group, and is a historical thing, and we cannot continue to dwell in the past. Because the father of the present president and the father of the main leader of the opposition have fought their battles in the 60s.
Well, in this case, Kenyatta has said that he is going to accept defeat. So what if perhaps it didn't turn out to be rigged as claimed by Odinga after all.
Well, that was very good what Kenyatta said. But remember that his first statement was to say that whoever loses should accept the loss.
So invariably?
So invariably, what we're saying is that now it's nice to say, it's nice of him to say he would accept defeat, because it looks like, from at least the results that have been presented, it looks like he's heading towards a victory as per the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission of Kenya. I don't think we can sit here and say what they have is credible or not credible. I don't think we're in that position. A lot of people who are present tend to believe that it was credible. But the challenge is this, that when would we start seeing African elections go the way in which it is possible for a ruling candidate to lose in an election? That's a sign of maturity coming into our political
We've seen
development.
that in Kenya. I mean, we've seen that in Ghana. We've seen that in Nigeria. Well, let me hold your thoughts.
Yes, I didn't want to talk about Nigeria.
Let's quickly come to Sylvester. Sylvester, you've just heard Clem's Baye's thoughts on this issue, but what's your assessment generally on how things are turning right now in Kenya, with Odinga, well, not really convinced that the elections were free, fair and credible?
Well, there is a basis, in Africa to dispute elections. Don't forget what Pascal Isuba of Congo Brazzaville once said, that incumbents don't organize the election to lose. So what that means is that everything is done to ensure that they stay in power. And rigging is not just, actual voting. On the day of voting, that elections, boxes are stopped and the rest of them. There's also what we call process rigging. And of course, Odinga is accusing the incumbent of having manipulated the computer system, to achieve the desired outcome. So that is a new dimension again, manipulating the computer system to achieve a desired outcome. It's just a new dimension. But of course, if elections are free and there is confidence building on the electorate right from the inception, so there is every, chance that contestants will accept the outcome of an electoral process.
All right, but if things do not really turn out well, like we all are presuming it to be, what step can be taken to prevent any further bloodshed in the country?
Well, I think that African leaders ought to have intervened much more earlier. You know what they did in the case of Nigeria. There was a team that was assembled internally here that was meeting with the president, and there was also costly visits by several, global leaders. John Kerry, Thabo Mbeki, and so many others came to Nigeria, while the Internal Peace Committee in Nigeria was also meeting regularly with the president. You recall on poll day during the presidential, balloting, they were sitting with the president in Aso Rock, in our own case. And now I'm not quite sure whether they have done that given the crisis of 2007 in Kenya. But I think that it is not too late to begin to mediate right now.
On that note, I'd like to thank you, Sylvester Odion Ahaine, Senior Lecturer, Political Science Department, Lagos State University in Nigeria. We appreciate your thoughts there. Well, let's wrap up the show with you now, Clem. If you were to describe the leadership style of Uhuru Kenyatta, would you say that it warranted what we are seeing today in terms of him leading the polls, according to the IEBC now?
Well, I think by and large his leadership style has not been down too negative. And one must commend him that he has been able to hold on to power and also to do certain things. Kenya has been developing, the economy has been growing at about 5% annually at a clip in the last 4 or 5 years, which is something to be commended. But the challenge is this, and perhaps it behoves of him and other leaders in Kenya that the Kenyan political system should be available for everybody to aspire to the highest office. But beyond that, the entire gamut of African politics is too tied to the concept of the strong man. We always are looking at that strong person who cannot be removed, who cannot be moved. What we ought to be thinking are strong institutions, like the Electoral Commission has earned some plaudits, but now the image of the commission is being dented by the accused. Well, maybe not dented, but these are allegations. Against the commission, especially because the head of IT was brutally murdered. That is a very sad thing. But that's it. We would continue to see this. We made some bit of progress, maybe 2 steps forward, then 1.5 steps backwards, and we just had half step forward. Half step forward is better than no step at all. Indeed.
Well, now you've mentioned something quite sensitive. That's the killing of Chris Msando. That's the IT head of the Electoral Board. Yes. Investigations are still on. They're still on. Do you think perhaps the cry of Odinga comes from, well, the allegations of Odinga comes from the investigations that is yet to prove who killed Chris Msando, and perhaps, you know, the elections was rigged after all from the onset?
Well, I think it's sad to have to refer to history again to say that in Kenya there has been a long history of political figures who are seen to pose a threat to die, you know, by not natural means. I mean, it's long from Tom Mboya and the rest of them. And I do hope that this is not the pattern and it would not have to continue to repeat itself. But the family of the gentleman concerned, I mean, must be really, really, you know, reeling in shock and completely devastated by what has happened. But there was a lot of hope because they had done the right things. But as Sylvester said, you can do the right things, but the process may just be flawed. And the flaw may not be a major flaw, but it may be is flawed such that it can affect the credibility of what we are doing. And that is what has happened.
And still on the electoral process entirely, because even if you look at it in terms of the argument of Raila Odinga, he brought out some reports of, you know, malpractices, that's some forms that had been manipulated even before the results had been released. So if all those things are tenable, do you think perhaps, you know, he could have won, or, you know, it could be the other way around?
Oh, that's difficult to say. But you see, the thing is that something can have faults, but the faults might not be enough to completely throw the bargain into the positive side. It is possible. That is very difficult. I know international observers tend to look at, you know, they tend to look at procedures and structures. At times, there is some of the things that take place are undercurrents, and some of these things are the dark arts, and there are things that people don't rig openly, but they're finding ways of trying to rig. And I suspect that somebody somewhere, even whoever it is, had a notion that we can still affect the result by getting this gentleman, God knows what they tortured him for, possibly for the source code, and that has caused this. But in any case, I do expect that should there be a dispute, it should go the way of the courts.
And what do you think could be the far-reaching implications if this matter isn't resolved quickly?
It should be resolved by some of the things that Sylvester has suggested, mediation, African leaders appealing to the two parties. But in the event that there is still a dispute, I think Mr. Odinga should go the way of the courts, like he did in 2013.
And on that note, let's leave it at that, because, well, we're still expecting the results. Yes. And let's hope the best candidate win in the Kenyan election. Thank you very much, Clem Baye. It's a pleasure to have your thoughts shared on the program tonight.
Thank you. Thank you.
One election gone means many more to come, with another opportunity for the people to reflect on the past and improve on the present in a bid to secure the future. It all starts by setting the record straight, shutting down sentiments, redefining the status quo, and raising the standard for leaders to either step up or be shown the way out through the ballot. Well, that is our package for today. But don't forget to join the conversation on Twitter at TVC News NG. And also follow me for updates around Africa at Esther TVC News. Until the next one, I am Esther Amakwariola, and always remember, change starts with you.